This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Chaya Garcia. Thank you for being on the show today. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's really an honor.
Well, it's always awesome to talk to people from all over the world, and we're going to talk about how not to how to see red flags and not paint them green in dating. That's kind of the focus today. But we're going to talk about like what you do and your story. But before we get to that, we always ask any guest a couple questions before we get to the heart of your story. So, what motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Such a great question. Thank you so much for asking. So, what motivates me is really the children of the world and the women of the world. The children that come into this world really need loving homes and homes that will not hurt them by accident. So,
Mhm.
so many children come into homes and they get all of these bad behaviors and these trauma bonds and all of these issues simply because the parents before them didn't heal before they chose a partner and
Mhm.
before they then had babies. So we're continuing generations with small people and big people that aren't as healthy as can be and with so much more pain simply because no one has taken the time to just sit still and instead of thinking about what you want, thinking about what you need to do with yourself to attract what you want in the best way that's sustainable, not just getting it in your life and then, when things don't work out, feel like you don't exactly have the best plan, like, how did I get here kind of moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this idealized vision of love, right, in relationships, and they think like they're going to find their soulmate, and the soulmate's going to solve all their problems.
Yeah,
But I've talked to a lot of therapists over the years, and like you can't. It's kind of simple. Like you can't love other people until you love yourself.
so true.
If you think that finding some soulmate or some magic bond with somebody is going to solve all your inner child issues, all your like imposter syndrome, all your all the issues you might have, if you've not addressed those, that other person might not even know. You might just automatically think they're going to solve it. A lot of times people don't even talk about
Yeah.
what's really going on. They just think it's going to be like a magic pill, magic thing that just it's just going to solve it. Like if you come into it like that, it's very it's kind of it's not really going to work that well.
Yeah, it's so true. A lot of people come into it like that's the end all be all. Like once I find my love, everything's going to work out, everything's going to be great. Someone's going to be there for me. And once I'm fully loved and have my best friend and partner all the time, then everything's going to be great. What they don't realize is that having that best friend and partner needs maintenance. It needs to be a sustainable best friend. It needs to be a sustainable partner. So many people meet someone, fall in love, get married, and then realize that if you don't know how to manage anger, if you don't know how to forgive, if you don't know how to communicate effectively, if you don't know how to become your best self and love yourself, then that amazing love that you think was supposed to change everything slowly disintegrates, creates so much havoc. You feel so alone in that space. And either stay in a marriage that is not that great or loveless or with god forbid abuse with physical or neglect, or you don't stay in the marriage, which is what we see a lot. People are constantly getting divorced and they never thought about that in the beginning, so we have to go back to the beginning and be like, these are new thoughts that are
Yeah,
necessary to make this decision.
and there's a lot of people, there's toxicity in relationships. So, like you have toxicity in the workplace, you have toxicity in a community. And the thing is like if you have a situation where you're talking about codependency, people get like what is codependency, like modern day codependency, like in terms of like how do you that's one thing that's in your list of things to discuss, but like what is modern day codependency for you? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So basically, basically everyone's an addict. It's just if you're addicted or not, like if you're an active addict or not. But we all have the potential to become addicted to various things. And so, the on the spectrum is addiction to substances like painkillers, pot, things that are substances and addictions of external sources. It can even be shopping or pornography or alcohol, things that you do outside. And it's like something that your drug of choice is to constantly give you highs and lows where you feel like you're in control of your life and your pain by, going towards what makes you feel better, even though in actuality, it's destroying your life and not helping you grow or manage your pain. And then on the other side of the spectrum is codependency. So that is also an addiction. It's just an addiction to love, to relationships, to people's approval. And so for me, I was a codependent in the sense that I didn't realize that my need to love another and to be in a relationship was actually an addiction, because if that love was removed from me, like if the relationship wasn't working or I needed to break up, I felt so frightened, just like an addict of drugs would feel frightened if they can't get that drug that day. And so
Mhm.
codependency in a modern day world is when you aren't okay on your own, you're not okay being alone, and the thought of abandonment or a relationship leaving you, whether that's a friendship or a parent or a romantic partner, scares the shit out of you, scares you so much that you keep going back into it because you're like, please just love me. I need you. But if,
You feel
when,
safer in the unsafe place.
right. Yes.
Kinda
The,
kinda bottom line it, but it's like, yeah, if you like, people are always looking for safety and then they have fear, right?
right.
Like, you like fear, and this, like, as an artist, like, I'm an artist and creative people run into this issue, like, you could stay safe and stay on the thing that always works, or
Yes.
you could be scared to like, "Well, what if I go into something I'm not that good at?" Right? But
Yeah.
I need to get better, right? And just phoning it in and staying on the same track, it's safe, but it doesn't feel good. I mean, it
Yeah.
just it's like it's like you're just phoning it in. You're just in a routine, and you get locked on the routine, but it's actually hurting to get
Yes.
locked in that. And it's a lot of fear and the idea of safety. Like we're scared of that wolf at the door, right? They don't know what that could be, and that might be more scary than what you're in.
And that's why people stay stuck in bad marriages, in loveless relationships, in bad jobs that don't serve them. They're like, well, I know the paycheck from this job is coming on the first of next month. I'm so scared not to know when that paycheck, and then they go, but I have bills to pay. Or, the abused woman will say, but I know that he's going to help me with the dishes and, with picking up my kid from school. And those, I really need those. So I'm going to stay because, that's what I know is going to happen. And the fear of the unknown is really where we need to start getting comfortable. Like
Yeah,
every successful entrepreneur will always say, you want to be successful, become comfortable in the uncomfortable. Get happy with pain. Start appreciating it. Start knowing that it's just adrenaline in your body. You can use it for good. But
yeah.
I was so scared to leave, my relationship, that the fear of the unknown kept me stuck in the familiar, but the familiar kept me stuck.
Yeah, some people, it's hard to be like, secure in your own thoughts. Like, like as an artist, like there's some artists that can be like totally do everything themselves. Like a Todd Rundgren, a Prince, like Stevie Wonder, they can actually sit in the studio and do everything by themselves, right? And there's other artists that got to be in a band, like the drummer. A drummer usually can't do anything without the rest of the band, right? And if the head writers of the band don't write anything, he's kind of dependent. So he's sitting there waiting for them to do something, and if they don't write anything, he can't do anything unless he jumps to another band. And then a lot of times, like he won't go to another band because he don't know if that's going to work out. So he'll stay. So it's like it happens at all kinds of levels, like microcosm, macrocosm. But like the idea of that fear, and it's interesting. I always pull out a quote from an artist like David Bowie said he loved to be kind of treading into unknown territory as an artist. That it was like, yeah, I'm not drowning, but I'm kind of treading water a little bit. Can he go into different places that he wasn't that comfortable in? He'd move to a different genre. He'd move to a different character, and that other character maybe made millions of dollars, and a new character, well, maybe nobody knows it, so that you're not going to make the money. But he felt like he wasn't a good artist unless he moved into territories that stretched him out. And I think people are scared of that. You see, like the entrepreneurs, the self-made people, the people who are kind of pioneers, they're willing to tread into that kind of pioneer territory, which
Yeah.
is, I think it's hard for people to do that because society kind of tells you to stay in a box, right? It's safer to be in a box.
Yeah, society loves when you're in a box. Society loves when you're not growing. I was just at Aspire, which is like an amazing event that they do it all over the world, and this one was in Atlanta. And the founder says the educational system was developed by poor people to keep you poor. Even if you get a good job, what's the max you're going to make? In an average, a hundred
Yeah,
thousand on average. Some things lower, sometimes it's 50K, sometimes it's 150K, but like on average, that's poor. You can't. The houses now, normal size houses in certain communities are $1 million. It's like things have
yeah.
changed. You can't. The society wants you to stay small because then you feed into like all of the insecurity, that the way that they've developed society and the economy, and not knowing who you are and not taking a stance and being quiet. But when I learned that the only thing that I have that will drive me to success is my voice and my choice,
Hmm.
nobody else mattered that much. I was like,
Yeah,
wait,
that's
what?
the thing. It's like having a unique voice where the problem is this is like we have some competing things going on in our society. Like capitalism is kind of built on individualism. And individualism to a certain point works, but you can't like even all these self-made people, right?
Yeah,
They try to tell you that they did it all by themselves. That's not true, right? Everybody who's like the big entrepreneurs, they tons of other people involved. Like I'm in software engineering. Not one person on a project is the person that did it. There's hundreds of people that did it. There's multiple architects. There's tons of workers. Like the CEO might take all the credit because they're in the press, but it's all those other people. So it's not that one person that's getting all the that's talking that did all the work. And you have to kind of understand. You have to sometimes reach beyond yourself to be able to be okay, right? You have to find partnerships, you have to find connections in society, but it's kind of this Horatio Alger myth that you can do it all by yourself.
yeah. And the way that we feel safe doing it, me beyond ourselves, is when we are able to communicate effectively and not be afraid of pain and know how to love ourselves. Because the reality is, no matter if you're in, software engineering and a job or a firm, or in a love and romantic relationship, you need to learn how to love yourself first so you can manage relationships in a way where you don't shift blame when things go wrong. So
Hmm.
Layla Hormozi is like a very, very well-known, CEO, and she's always like, if there's something wrong in my company, I go back to myself. Like, what am I doing? How am I doing that thing that I'm not happy that my company is doing? Yeah,
Yeah, you got to set the tone, right? You have to kind of have your vision. If your vision is subjugated to other people's vision, then you're gonna feel like you could be a people pleaser, and then you're never satisfying yourself, right? And so then you're like, and then suddenly you could kind of hit the breaking point, and people don't know why you're upset because they thought that that's what you want, but you're not
right,
even being doing what you want. And then suddenly, if you hit the breaking point, they're like, well, yeah, how did I know that that's not what you want? You didn't
right,
communicate.
yeah. And people are scared to communicate. I remember one of the bases of my story is that when I was dating this guy many years ago, like about 10 years ago or more, and he decided that he wanted to break up to do drugs, and then left me because I told him if we were going to date, then I don't want you doing drugs. So he decided at that point that he wants to go do drugs, which means we are breaking up. And I could have been like, oh, what's wrong with him? He's such a like loser. He's an addict. What's wrong with him? You
Yeah.
know, but I took that moment, even though it was so painful, when you think the person you're going to be with breaks up with you, especially for something stupid that you don't fully understand. I didn't fully understand addiction yet at that time.
Mhm.
I had to look back at myself, Phantom. I had to be like, I know I can blame him right now for making this stupid decision, but what about me attracted this
To
type of
his
person?
type of person, yeah. They gotta
Yeah,
look at the looking glass self, I always look at the
yes,
Victorian poets, this idea of the looking glass self. He said, "What does
yeah,
that mean?" Like, self-examination
yes.
is kinda
Self
what it means. Y
responsibility.
Yeah, that you look at it, you take on the hard questions, like, "Why am I doing this? What am I doing?" Are there things I could change? Like, look at the how, what, why. It's like, why are you and if some people, they don't they're told, like, "Well, just suck it up. If it hurts, don't think about it." Only don't dive into it, or they have a lot of resentments. They do the opposite. They just look at the past all the time
All the time.
and don't look at what they could do better, right? It's like a lesson learned. Like in industry, we have these lessons learned, and we have to get in the room, and people say you got to be honest. You can't just like not talk for that hour, 2 hours. You need to say like, what could we have done better? And it's not a blame game. See, some people don't want to talk because like if they say they did something wrong, they say, well, it's going to show up in my performance review, so they don't want to say anything. But if you have an environment where the boss sets the tone, it's like I'm not going to take it out on you if you actually admit where the problems are. A lot of people don't feel safe in that discussion because they feel like if they go and they say it, then they're going to get marked for what they point out.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many women I know, both professionally as clients and then personally as friends, knew the relationship wasn't working out. But they were and knew that this person wasn't really ready to get married because they weren't showing signs of it. But they were so darn scared to ask, "Are you ready to get married? Are you ready to commit?" They were so scared to say, like, "I wanna get married, and if you're not ready to get married, then we shouldn't be together because I don't wanna just waste my time and have no ROI. Like, I don't wanna invest all my time, love, energy
Yeah,
getting to know you
the
if
answer's
there's no
scary.
return."
Yeah, the answer's scary. Like you probably have a good idea what the answer's going to be, so
Right.
you don't ask it because then you kind of perpetuate that codependency or that kind of situation. It's not the best situation because you're just it's like the inevitable. You're just
Yeah.
postponing the inevitable because you don't want to hear it today.
Yeah,
You know,
and they
it,
stay in relationships for years because they're so afraid to ask those hard questions, like I would say, those important questions. They're just like, "We'll figure it out. He'll probably propose later on." But they're not in the reality of the now and the truth of the now. And so if you don't learn how to communicate effectively and ask the hard questions of like, "Where am I at? What kind of man do I want who's in the same space as me?" then it's definitely very difficult to attract and then also know who to stay with and when to walk away if you don't even know the questions to ask to see if they're in the same phase of life as you.
yeah, because it's like people say opposites attract, but it's like you got to have some like if you're in gonna be with this person for the rest of your life, right? You have like zero in common. Like, what are you going to talk about? Like, if you can't have a conversation where you're on different sides of an issue, or you have different beliefs, you have
Yeah.
different ideals, you have different concepts. Like, if you're okay with having a discussion and you don't get angry at each other, I guess that can work. But if you can't actually even talk your truth, if you can't speak your mind, if your vision has to get subjugated, then that seems like, well, that doesn't work. And maybe there's passion and that works, but that's not the whole thing. I've been in a marriage, my first wife, I've been married one time and I'm still married and since 1999. And it's hard. It's hard work. It's like every day you got to work. Every day we don't always agree on the same things, but like if you're in a relationship because it's like it's not always going to be happy days like that TV show. It's like, it's not always happy days, it's not Ozzy and Harriet. No, it's not Leaving the Beaver, like, every day. It's like, you're not gonna be like that. Like, you have to deal with reality, like, in the good days and the bad days, days in between. And I think some people are looking for something that's not fully possible, but it can't be like, searching for perfection in art is, like, not the ideal. A lot of times, it's the thing that's, like, the happy accident, the thing that's not perfect, actually is really beautiful. Right? But it's like not that you're not close, but trying to overly seek perfection can be a trap.
Yeah. Because you think that perfection is going to serve you, but in reality, we don't marry what we want. We marry who we are. I'm just going to say that again because it's so powerful. We don't marry what we want. We marry who we are. So if you're, not sober a lot, if you're coming to yourself with love, but then also abandoning yourself when you're in pain and not acknowledging your feelings and brushing your feelings under the rug instead, but you want this really amazing, nurturing guy, that's not going to happen. You will attract someone who will do the same thing with you, who might not be sober all the time and who will be affectionate at times, but then also when you're really needy, will just not be available and will neglect you in your difficult moments the same way you were already doing before you met him. So when we come to a point where we have to understand that our pain is, you know, precious, and it's not something to be neglected or ignored, like what you were saying, like push it under the rug or get over it, or you can handle it, or just move on or distract yourself. When we start giving power to our pain to say, what does it want to tell us? This is so important. I want to hear why my body's out of whack. I want to hear why my emotions are feeling this way, instead of just, just pushing, 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 and just hoping that something else, once it comes, will make us feel better. When we can really get towards ourselves, then we can attract people who are on a much higher level.
It's like this idea of the law of attraction. Like I'm a Buddhist, but this like yeah, there's this concept like we radiate a certain frequency and we attract the people who are kind of in our frequency. So if
Yes.
you're kind of got a prickly frequency and you're dissonant, or in terms like music, like you have harmony, you have dissonance, you have noise, you have distortion, discordance. If you're
Yeah.
kind of in a discordant state, right, you're kind of prickly, you're all over the map, you're not very harmonious. You're probably going to bring people around you that are in that same kind of state,
Yeah.
right? And
Like,
if you're more harmonious, then things are going to be not that you can be in harmony all the time. In a song, we have different parts, right? Sometimes there's parts that low discordant, low dissonance, a low disharmony, and then we bring it back to harmony. So it's not like it's going to stay in harmony all the time, but it's got to be there enough for it to be viable.
yeah. And the way we make more harmony is by going through those darker times or the discord times with a little bit more grace, so that you can go back to your harmony a lot faster. And you can
Yeah,
get, if you stay in the discord and you don't know how to approach it, and you like hate yourself when you're in a bad mood, and you think you're such a loser when you can't get stuff done, and you beat yourself up and you berate yourself in your head and you call yourself names and you hang around people who complain a bunch, it's really hard to stay in that harmony, or to have like long periods of the song that are in harmony.
yeah.
So, you know, you really want to make sure that your surroundings, your environment internally, what you say to yourself, your inner talk, and also the people who are talking around you, are they speaking kindly to you and uplifting, or are they critical and kind of harsh and hard on you?
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
about balance. Like, they're talking about like forgiveness, and one of your points is a component of like a healthy mind body relationship. And I think there's a lot of pillars to a human being. So a lot of times, some people will like just focus on the body, they get six pack abs, they're totally perfect, right? But then their mind and their heart and their soul could be a little like not in the right zone. I actually
Yeah.
had a guy who was like performance, like a sports, I don't know, coach, and he was in perfect physical condition, but his spirit and his heart and his soul, like when he looked in the mirror, he did not see the six pack abs. He
Yeah.
saw something else.
Yeah.
Everybody outwardly look at him and think it's like, oh, there's no problem, but there was a problem, and that's because there's a lot of pillars to a human being, and if you just focus on one, then you're not gonna be like in harmony.
Yeah.
But
There you go. It's okay. Oh, do you want me to go, or you?
yeah, yeah, you can go.
I was going to say there are definitely many pillars, but the one that they all stand on is self love. So, like, you can have six pack abs, you can have a lot of success, you can own four companies, you can have $4 billion, but those are all pillars on top of the foundation, on top of pillar A or pillar one or pillar foundation, which means that, like, self love, if you don't love yourself, which means accept yourself as is, forgive yourself for your mistakes, protect yourself from people, places, and things that hurt you, which then attracts people who are also going to love you in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way. That all those other pillars, like you're saying, the basis of it is self love. The basis of it is I love myself. I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to use my choices to love me and to support me and to protect me and to protect my body and my mind as is, without needing it to change, without needing other things to change. And that is how I can then approach all these other things and have success in all the other areas where I can appreciate my money and my six pack abs. Because if you're hard on yourself, you can have all the money, but you think you need more. You can have six pack abs, but it'll never be enough. Once you love yourself and you're enough, then you can appreciate and actually be highly successful, and value your successes.
Yeah, I think it's real important to not get like tunnel vision. Because I think sometimes like in social media, and people have these, I got like 10 steps to this and diets and like immediate success. They can go 0 to $1 million. And it's like, there's nothing that's that simple. there's always a lot of hard work, as anybody who practices like behavior, like your mind and your mindset. It's like if you're an athlete, you have to do like 10,000 hours. If you're a musician, 10,000 hours. An actor, any discipline, scientist, you got to do the work. You can't really skip steps, right? So you can't just cheat sheets and maybe it looks like you did it, but then at the end of the day, you didn't do it. You know what I mean? It's like if you skip what is necessary to get yourself in the right frame, then it's just gonna be a band-aid, right?
100%. And people are getting into marriages that are band-aids. And then they're not understanding that, the wound needed a lot more than a band-aid. Like the wound is like this big and your band-aid's like this big. Like you can get your band-aid marriage,
It needs
but it's not going to help because you needed a lot more of steps that you needed to do to heal, that only you can do to heal. And that band-aid that you thought was just going to be the perfect, fix, it's too small for all of you that you to do the work. When I
Mhm,
started my healing process, I went into it, as if I was in, medical school learning the physiology. I literally have so many books all over. I mean, I spent, like you said, 10,000 hours and plus devouring books on self-love, like the OGs, like Louise Hay, How to Love Yourself. Your thoughts create your reality. Every word you speak creates your reality. Every physical ailment is created by a false belief system that's hurting you. Like the OGs, Louise Hay, like what do you think of yourself? Melanie Beattie, Robin Norwood, all of these people are very famous in the healing world, and they wrote books that are now sold millions and millions of dollars, millions and millions of books, and it's all about how we need to feel our feelings and
mhm.
approach ourselves with love. And remember that no one else's job is to help us. They can support us and uplift us, but they're not there to save us or fix us. And we're not there to save or fix someone else, which was my
Yeah,
illness.
yeah, that's a problem. Like, you always wanna save somebody or you're looking for somebody to save you. He's like or an in between. Um, and the thing is, a lot of times, like, people feel shame in trying to, like, um be more confident. Like sometimes the people who feel confident, people say, "Well, that's arrogant," right? So some people might, but it's like, so how people perceive you, there's always going to be somebody like a hater that doesn't like where you are. So or how you're behaving. But if you're actually true to yourself, it's like, does that really matter? It's like sometimes you shed people who weren't really like on your frequency.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
maybe they were the people that were you were stuck in the codependency. Once you get to a better place, those people probably aren't gonna really be compatible with you anymore. You might be able to say hi, bye, just a regular conversation, but you're not gonna be able to really have a lot of depth with them, right?
yeah, 100%. Because only hurt people hurt. So when you're not hurting yourself, you don't attract people who are going to also hurt you. And when the haters come and you're in a great place, you're like, I love myself, I take care of myself, I appreciate myself. And then they're like, well, I don't like you, you're an idiot. You're like, well, that's okay. You probably need to heal. I get it. I
Oh, what happened? We lost you. Well, that's interesting. Suddenly we froze. I hope you didn't have a net
now and
problem.
I understand that if you're going to I'm back. Are you back?
Okay. Yeah, I'm back. There was a little freeze there. I don't know what happened, but it's okay.
Yeah, that was only a second. I think we're good. But we can understand that if other people are, saying mean things on the internet, they're taking their time, their mouth, their energy, and their words just to hurt someone else,
Yeah, it's a lot of
then you can be like, that you can feel sad for them. Be like, you know what, God, please help this person heal. Like if they're so angry and full of pain that they're using their time to hurt other people,
yeah.
you can have a lot of compassion for them, but not take it personally.
Well, constructive criticism is great. Like as an artist, we love having beta readers or beta listeners, beta watchers that'll look at our stuff and give us. But when somebody comes back and say they just hate it, but they don't tell you why, or they say insults and they think that's valid, and they people who spend their time doing that, it's very toxic. These people are disruptive. They just want to do it because they think it's hip or they think it's cool, whatever they think. It's like, but it doesn't matter what they think. Like that's the point. Like a certain level, you have to have a little bit of armor to understand. Like not everybody in the world's gonna get you, right? And if you wanna
Yeah.
spend all your time trying to get everybody to get you, well, that's probably not gonna work that good.
Yeah, and at some point when you heal, you don't even want other people to get you, like everyone. You just want your tribe. When you really heal and you become healthier and healthier and more successful, you realize that there is a smaller percentage of people who are healthy and successful than not. And then you decide that you want a smaller tribe, you want less friends, you want,
Yeah,
people around you who are on your frequency that are going to lift you up. And so many people blame other people. Like, I'm so angry because my husband did this, or my wife did that, or my kids, or my boss, or the government, or the world, or the
yeah,
war.
resentments.
There's
So many
so,
resentments. It's like,
yeah, there's,
how do you live with all your resentments? That's what I always
yeah,
point out to people. It's like, I love to just be in a a space of pushing creative ideas.
yeah,
And when you do that, there are people come back immediately and they say they hate it. And I'm like, okay, it's like, but you took a lot of time to just say you hate something. What are you doing?
right.
Are are you creating anything? Are you saying anything other than parroting what other people tell you? And so the mindset of like critical thinking, actual, empathy. There's a loss of empathy, and there's this thing. It's like it's cool to be uh, hip and just criticize and the blame game, and to say, well, the other is responsible for my happiness. So look, how is this other person responsible for you? What you're doing is like you're responsible for you.
Yes, 100%. And everyone blame I mean, I can't tell you how many people are always angry at someone else. If, like, you stop people in the street, they'll be like, "My ex cheated on me 3 years ago," and, or "My dad did this horrible thing," or "My mom, and, like, I haven't spoken to them," or "They're so mean," or "They did the wrong thing," or "They stole money," or "They didn't do that." Like, everyone's just still holding on to anger, but,
Yeah,
one of the basest ways to have self-love and high success in relationships and in other areas of life is when you protect yourself and love yourself, you also know how to forgive yourself when you make mistakes and other people when they make mistakes. Even if they made a mistake on purpose or by accident, it's irrelevant. But
mhm.
forgiveness is a big, powerful thing that a healing person chooses. I chose and still continue to choose to forgive my husband every day for stupid things. I have an amazing husband. I worked really hard to get to where I am. I mean, I married an amazing man and I got really hard there. But, even in a great marriage, you still have to forgive all the time. Like, they didn't do the dishes today and you expected that. I forgive. They were
I can
probably
I can
tired,
take I
like,
can think for that.
yeah, right? You just gotta get into a forgiveness zone. You make a mistake, one day of my life, I'm still learning and growing. I made a mistake on that email or with that person or with that client or that website. You know what? This is just one moment in my long career of life and business and love. I'm gonna just keep going. You don't get down on yourself. You just lift yourself up by being kind to yourself with love and forgiveness.
Yeah, because some people, they live the perfection trap is like, if you can't get it to be perfect, then a lot of people, like, they just, like, drop it,
Yeah,
right? They either drop it or they don't dive into it. They don't try to fix it, because then they say, "Well, I can't even do it," right? So they get to totally down on themselves, like they can't solve it, they can't fix it. So as soon as you get into the can't, then you won't. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
yeah,
so that if you've got to, get out of that, and forgiveness is like you gotta forgive yourself, right? And then once you can forgive yourself, then you can forgive other people. But if it goes back to that kind of self-love. If you don't have that self-analysis, like looking glass self, looking at what's going on and actually being honest about it and not putting the sugarcoat in it. And that's hard. People don't like to deal with the hard things, because that's why they're hard.
yeah. When I ask clients when I first start working with them, do you love yourself? The answer is always yes. I've literally had not one person in my entire career, and I've been doing this for about 20 years, where when I first asked them, do you love yourself? They said no. They always say yes. But then you ask them, okay, well, what do you do when you make a mistake? How do you
Mm.
treat yourself? What do you allow in your life? When someone like mistreats you, what do you do? How quickly do you walk away from situations when you're not comfortable? What do you call yourself when you do something wrong? How long do you stay in a date or a relationship once you know it's not working? And all of the answers, especially with people that I work with, are I stay in relationships longer than I should, even though I know they're hurting me. I'm really hard on myself when I make mistakes. I think I should do better. And you're like, that's not love. Like, dude, you don't even understand what love is if you think that you love yourself and this is your behavior and your inner talk.
Mhm.
Like, you need to redefine love so hard and so fully, because no wonder people are attracting relationships that abuse them, either with neglect by just not being there for them when they need them, or through abuse, verbal, emotional, physical, sexual, God forbid. People don't even understand what love is. It's just like this term of like fluffiness that isn't broken down enough, which is why I have my company to really help women break down love so that they can understand what love looks like, sounds like, feels like in a healthy way, to start doing that with themselves to attract their highest potential.
Yeah, because I think everybody's looking for, like, the right person, like, what you call it, like, the right guy,
Yeah.
and that might be, like, the rabbit hole to go down. Because like, why is it, like, the worst way to go about finding love, looking for the right guy or right person?
Well, I think we have to become, I think we do need to know what we want and who we are and what we need. So, like a Jewish person who likes menorahs and dreidels and to celebrate Hanukkah, if they choose a Christian person who's not going to do any of that and they like going to Santa Claus and putting up Christmas trees and spending Easter, their entire year, that's, with milestones of holidays and family gatherings and traditions, they're two different worlds. So
Yeah.
you have to understand what's your heritage, what's your background, what's your culture, what do you value? Like, what do you value? What do you
You
want
gotta
in your
push
house?
yourself down, yeah, you gotta push
Yeah,
yours down to kinda say, "Okay, I have, assimilated." And, some people are about that, they think, like, if you have somebody that's more dominant, they think that you should, and it could be a male or female in a relationship, they kinda says, "This is what the religion of the family is gonna be.
yeah,
This is what the belief system of the family is gonna be." And
yeah.
if anybody deviates from that, then they get shunned. I've had family conversations with some people have this certain idea in the family, and if you go against that idea, you get shunned. People don't want you to come in. They treat you different. They treat you bad,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, why should you accept that?
Well, the reason that people get down that rabbit hole is because they didn't understand that that hole was a rabbit, like, which means that they didn't understand themselves what they value, right? So let's say you're of a certain faith and you're like, whatever, I don't care who I marry as long as I love them and we respect each other, which is the biggest bullshit, because respect is irrelevant in practical application of daily life. It's just not really it's a very misunderstood concept, just like love. Like, what do you mean? They can respect you or not, but if they keep telling you to change your faith or your beliefs or what you're going to
That
teach
doesn't
your
seem like
kids,
it's respectful. That doesn't seem respectful at the bottom
yeah,
line. It's like, are
right.
are you gonna do 50-50 that we do both? Like, and maybe that's okay with you, they do both? It's like, okay, if you can handle doing both things, that's
But the
cool, but if
thing
you try
is,
to actually say one or the other, then that gets the problem.
yeah. And even the thing is, when one person says, this is the way that I'm going to do it, the other person always feels resentful. So even if they promise they'll do it 50-50, which doesn't usually happen. Usually they're like, this is what we're going to teach the kids. No, somebody's getting left out.
Yeah, yeah,
Somebody's values are getting not heard.
pushed
Somebody's
down, yeah.
spiritual growth is getting stunted. So many people say like they have problems in their marriage, but a big part of it is they didn't marry someone of the same values and faith as them, that when they go into their spiritual growth, just by being, spiritual beings in a human existence, which we all are, they
Mm,
slowly separate because they didn't even take the time to say, you know what, I value my values. I value my heritage. A lot of times when people are young, they're like, I don't care what my faith, my heritage, my culture is, whatever, but then they get married and have kids and they're like, "Oh, I do really care." But it's a little
yeah,
too late at that
that's
point.
hard. Yeah,
Yeah,
because, like, if you're I'm African American, there's a whole history there. If somebody doesn't really believe that African American history is actually equal to American history, but you never talked about it because you didn't think it mattered,
right.
right? And then suddenly you start getting into situations like, well, that does matter. So then it's like they just like, well, now that's a big issue. But that could be a really big issue. And so people like they minimize culture, right?
Yes.
Sometimes they minimize spirituality. And then
Yes.
they talk about this amorphous thing like love. It's like, whoa, those other things are real too, right? So you have to understand, like the pillars we said, like human beings have all these different like faces or hats or mindsets. And there's always a tendency for one mindset to try to trump the other, one spirituality vision to trump the other vision. One political concept to trump the other political concept. So there is some like truth to the compatibilities. Like, are you fully compatible? Have you actually even dived into it?
Yeah, because people don't realize that compatibility, it's not just about how well you get along in the beginning. It's about the sustainability. And that's really a lot of what my company does. It's like you need to choose a partner that you're going to love and that you're going to find attractive, but that's going to be sustainable for the future, for as you evolve. And because so many people evolve spiritually, especially as they age, you need to understand that your faith, your heritage, your culture, your values and beliefs, like they need to be aligned with your partner, and they need to be something that you ask yourself, like, what do I value? How much do I value this? If a Jewish man marries a non-Jewish woman who's Christian, the children are Christian because according to Jewish faith, it's a maternal bloodline. So the Christian, like then the guy could be like, well, I wanted my kids to be Jewish, but I loved her, and it gets all messed up. You
Yeah.
know, so it's like you have to be like, what do I value before you choose? Because people get themselves into sticky situations because they didn't take the time to understand themselves before they made the choice of who's going to be good for them.
Do you think it's like a societal pressure to not be alone, to fit in? There's a lot of cultural pressures, right? To get married because that makes you shows that you're part of your success, right? Part of like being like a citizen within a structure is like a culture is like or being part of that
I'm just
culture is
getting
like
my
oh,
charger.
oh
No,
yeah,
I'm,
come back.
I'm here. I'm just plugging in my laptop because the charger
Oh,
fell out. I'm with you. I'm with
okay.
you.
It just seems like people don't think about
Yeah, people also, American society in general loves to do this thing where nothing matters, kind of like, like just love everyone, I'm this, I'm that, just it's all okay. Whatever I want is the right thing. And I was watching Grant Cardone speak about this, like, no, like there are certain things that are more truthful than others. And we need to understand that it's not just about having this like frivolous societal like, oh, I'm married and it's fine, or you just have to respect my decisions. It's like, okay, but you need to respect your decisions. What are your decisions, and are
that.
you okay with them? Because it's not just about getting married, it's about what are you creating after that wedding day. Like, what family, what dynamics, what patterns of trauma did you not resolve that you're just carrying into your
Yeah,
family you
like if
know
your whole family's had a history of like addiction
yeah.
and and you're still in it, right? Where and then you get married and you think that was going to be the panacea, but you never solved the core problem. Like you say, so you mentioned all kinds of addiction, like gambling, pornography. If you go into that and you didn't solve it, it's going to keep on happening. If you have low self esteem and you didn't solve it, it's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
If you're like a somebody that's always a people pleaser and you didn't solve that, it's going to keep on happening. So the problem is people just, like if shove it under the rug, they go for the surface level thing. We kind of very surface level. Nobody wants to deal with anything. Everything's like, even our media, like people can't pay attention for longer than 15 seconds, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Books used to be 200,000 words. Now there's 70,000 words. It's like, is our comprehension of even our listening skills. Are we actually listening to our partner? Did we actually hear what they said? Or did we hear what we wanted to hear?
Yes. And most of the time, it's people hear what they want to hear. I still remember when I was going through my process, like when I was deep in my addiction of just not being able to feel safe enough with myself, that I needed to feel safe in an external love of a relationship. I know when I remember I would ask him, like, So you're going to be clean, right? Like you're going to stop doing drugs. And he would say yes. And I knew he was lying, and he knew he was lying, and we all knew he was lying, but I couldn't handle that. So I heard what I needed to hear, and he told me what he needed to hear, which was that he's going to stop doing drugs.
Yeah.
But, sometimes the addiction isn't like a needle in your arm. Sometimes that's too, but like sometimes it's more subtle. You're just
Yeah.
addicted to lies. You're just addicted to superficial six packs or money or likes or people appraising you or a straight A's in school or whatever you're the thing that you think is important. But it's so important to think about Robin Williams, who had everything he wanted. He got his career, he had a wife, he had multi-millions of dollars, but he hated himself so much and he ran away from his pain that slowly the pain just caught up. And instead of the demons being removed and
Still there.
transformed, he took his own life.
We see
And
that a
Robin,
lot with artists.
yeah,
We see it like in the art world. We got the 28 Club, Janis Joplin, Hendrix, Jim Morrison, right? And then Kurt Cobain. He's a kind of, and there's really great artists that didn't solve really core problems.
yeah,
There's a lot of in the art world. There's a lot. Part of our secret sauce is we can take our pain and turn it into art. But the problem is the industry tries to turn that into like a money machine. So
right.
then you get rewarded to continue bad behavior or very destructive behavior. So that gives you your inspiration to write about, and then you're locked in a cycle, which is like the codependency of your art.
Yes,
And
yes,
that can be very super destructive. And a lot of times it takes people out of the game very young
yes.
because it's just an overload. And you have to stand up and be a kind of fight against that and say, no, I'm not going to go that way. And it's hard because there's a lot of people that actually make money after you going that way.
Yeah, it's become cultural to be painful. I mean, there's so many movements now, not to name them, lest we create too much controversy on your channel, but there are smaller groups of people who are in a lot of pain, who just like to yell and tell everyone what's right and what's wrong and what they should do and how they should treat everyone. And it's like, what if you didn't focus on everyone else and just focused on yourself and how to love yourself and take care of yourself? Because now there's this American society slash other societies of culture where pain is being praised. Like,
Yeah, it's very destructive.
it's
Like
so,
I mentioned the liberal version of it. There's a conservative version of it, right? And there's in between, but there's like every point of view you can have, you can get too excessive. And if you believe, like, if you get somebody that thinks their rights are violated just because you exist, that gets a little crazy. If somebody gets offended and they think that you're disrupting them because they want to control you, and their freedom is they need the freedom to control you. And I'm like, how is that freedom? It's like, so suddenly you're the only one that has freedom. So
yeah,
it's very it like logically it doesn't make sense. You start if you try like I'm into math, I'm a mathematician, I'm in science, but so when we see things that are illogical, like you rub your head. And I'm in both sides of the world, left, right brain. I do art and I do science. And so then there's a good way, the yin and yang of that, because then you can see the grace. You can see
yeah,
stuff. There's stuff that's not logical. Like art sometimes isn't logical. It's emotion. And then science can be very logical, but there can be emotion that controls where you go with the science. And then people try to say, no, 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 yeah, there
yeah,
is. It's like so
yeah,
you can build algorithms that leave people out. You can build controls that suppress people. And so and people say, "Oh, that's all science." It's like, no, you have motivations on how you use the tools. Say in your life, you have tools like how you express yourself, your voice, and what you listen to. So, like, you have to be aware of what you're doing. Like situational awareness in your life, right?
yes. as well as situational protection, that when you realize the situation isn't good, you feel safe enough going into that unknown and walking away or quitting the job or ending the marriage or leaving the relationship or whatever situation it is. Like, once you realize that it's not benefiting you, it's not getting you to your highest potential, it's not fulfilling your soul's purpose on this earth, you feel safe enough to go into the unknown, even if it's scary, to leave that so that you have space to create something better and to attract something new.
Yeah, it's important. But also one thing is like a lot of people think there's this idea is there really only one partner that's right for you? Or could you actually find people there's lots of people that would be right for you, and I guess it's a discernment, like,
So
which one is the one you're gonna be with?
So I'll explain it from the way that I understand it. So according to the Old Testament and like an oral, what's it called, commentary on it, we have seven potentials of soulmates. And based on where we're at is who we match. So we have seven potential soulmates. And again, how much you grow and heal and work on yourself and become, as other forces would say, enlightened or more self-loving or healthy, you then attract a higher level of a spouse. So when I found this out, I was like, that makes so much sense to me, because I have met soulmates before who were so freaking unhealthy. But guess what? I was so freaking unhealthy. So we matched beautifully.
Yeah,
And then I realized, like, oh, I only want to marry my number one. I only want to marry my number one, my highest potential of love on this earth. And that means I need to work really, really hard on getting to know what love looks like, sounds like, feel like, what's healthy versus unhealthy. What are my belief systems about money, intimacy, men, relationships, God, like marriage? Like, what are my beliefs? And if you don't take the time to ask yourself, then you never understand. There's not things that you get to know by default of just living and having frivolous conversations. You have to sit with yourself and no one else and ask yourself, what do I believe about? And really get to know yourself, see where your limited beliefs are, see where your trauma pains are, where you want to shift and transform the stuck parts of you. And so I decided I was going to marry my number one. And so I did all that work and I waited and I waited. And then sometimes you meet other people in the process of waiting and you're like, oh, so close, but no, so close, but no, because you've already have your standards. And
yeah,
then when my husband came, he did, and he is for sure my number one. And I think that means it's that life, even though there's just challenges in marriage by default, it's never based on character, it's based just on circumstance. So when we have conflict in our marriage or lows versus highs, it's never based on who he is. He's amazing, sober, a provider, good-natured, kind, well-intentioned, considerate, compassionate, all these things of his character. And then there's stupid things like me being postpartum, which is not so stupid, but like I lost my mind and it was a really, really hard part of our marriage after our first baby. I was not okay, which created a lot of friction.
mhm.
But that wasn't like I'm a bad person or he was a bad person. It
It's
was like
circumstance. Yeah,
circumstantial, not
yeah.
character based. So we really do have an amazing marriage based on the character alignment. Yeah.
Well, I think some people have
So
this
that's how you
idea.
marry your number one. So I do believe there's
Yeah,
different potentials.
yeah, it's true.
Oh, sorry, where there's a lag.
Oh, there's a
Sorry about
lag
that.
now. That's okay.
Okay,
Finish your
now you're
thought.
back. Okay, go.
But, yeah, it's like you were talking about your circumstance because you had the postpartum and so a lot of times things happens, like, it's like when you're a captain on a ship and if you never have a stormy ocean, right, you won't be able to handle it. The idea is, like, in your life, it's not always gonna be calm waters,
Right.
and if you're in a long-term relationship, you've been in a relationship like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Anybody who's been in relationships that long, they can tell you like there's how did they stay? Well, either they stayed because they just didn't want to get out, or they actually learned how to evolve together. You know,
Right.
they learned how to communicate and they actually talk. Versus like,
Yeah.
older generations, you can go see grandma and grandpa and they don't really talk. They kind of threaten at each other. It's like, okay, I accept you for now with the way it is. But like compared to like if you're willing to have a really, you know, kinda, I don't know, it's just a human relationship. You actually treat each other with respect, right?
Yeah. and then it's not only treating each other with respect, but feeling safe with yourself and the other person to talk about things that are hard to talk about. Like when you're having a hard day, or you're scared, or you're overwhelmed, or you're feeling suicidal, or you're depressed, or you're super anxious, all these things that are normal. If you don't have a safe space with your
Yeah,
partner,
you be
it's
honest.
hard to talk. Yeah, it's hard to be honest and actually move past them.
Yeah, if you can have an honest conversation that might bring you to tears, right? That may make you upset, that may make you speak words, but then you can live with yourselves with that. You don't create a toxic situation. You don't create a bad, you know, psychological situation or physical situation. You can actually have an adult conversation,
Right.
which doesn't an adult conversation means it's not always happy. It's not always
Right.
perfect, not always harmonious. It means that you can have an argument. You can have a difference in opinion. And it's okay,
Where,
right?
yeah. And when you have that difference of opinion, you're not saying you're such an asshole for doing this, and you didn't do that right, and you didn't do this right, and how come you don't do this, and you should have bought me flowers, and you should have not looked at that like, you're not telling the other person what they should or should not do, and taking your unhappiness and blaming your unhappiness because of someone else's behaviors. You're
Mhm.
saying, I feel sad because I needed more attention, or I feel sad because I needed you to do this, or I'm feeling sad because I'm feeling triggered on something that I'm going through, and I didn't get what I needed from myself, and it would be really helpful if you would, be there for me in this way. But it's very I focused, and it's very like, I'm a vulnerable, needy person, just like every other person in this world is vulnerable and needy, and these are my needs and my vulnerabilities. And then you work with the person. You're not ever attacking them for not
Yeah.
doing the right thing. You get it?
Yeah, you're being the vulnerability is not hidden. Like
Right.
you like, and that's hard because people want to protect themselves. They want to feel safe. If you can't feel safe to reveal your vulnerabilities to your mate, to your partner, then you probably need to think about like what's going on.
Yeah, and getting
If
a new
you-
partner.
yeah, 'cause if you can't reveal your vulnerabilities to in your own in your space that's supposed to be safe, then it doesn't appear that it's really as safe as you thought it was.
Yes. Yes. Because safety is where the growth is in the relationship. And so many times women will think that they are lovable because they make dinner, or they have sex with them, or they clean the house, or they, make them, food, or whatever these stupid things that women do that think that makes them lovable. It's like, no, your lovability really is in your vulnerability. And that's why he won't really connect with you, because if you're not really being honest and vulnerable with yourself and what you can provide, not for based on what you do, but based on who you are,
Mhm.
then you're always in a kind of an abusive relationship. Because even if the abuse isn't so overt, which sometimes it is, there's a lot of neglect. Women who don't believe that they are lovable for who they are, but only what they can do, like how they look, if they're attractive, and how much they
Yeah,
sleep with them,
surface
all that
level,
stuff,
right, yeah.
then they lose that vulnerability and the essence of a healthy relationship really fast.
Yeah, it's so surface level, like how you look, how you behave, what you do,
Yeah.
versus like who you are, right?
Yes.
And who you are gets into these get that deep conversation with somebody, your partner, like you're talking for like 3 hours and you're actually uncovering stories and you're understanding the person. Right. And the stories aren't like made up to satisfy you. They're actually what really is a picture into their soul, right? And if you can do that and you come back and forth do that, then that feels like really like you're in a connected relationship. Like
Yeah.
it's not about the physical passion, but if you can have passionate conversations that bring you closer, that people are so into to the surface level romance, which is, it's in the books, it's in the movies, it's in the poetry, but like put it on the rubber on the road, that conversation that where you really find out who they are, that's probably worth more.
It's worth everything, because that's where your growth is. Your growth is in the vulnerability. Your growth is when you're not okay and you have someone there for you. And then before find your person. That needs to be you being there for you. But that's the growth. The growth isn't when you're happy and everything's working out and you had the best day ever. It's when all the other days, when you're feeling so many emotions and so many feelings, and you need to sit with yourself and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? How can I love myself more? What do I need to protect myself? In which relationship? And that gives you a sense of safety and security, so that when you choose a partner, you have safety and security to go into those vulnerable moments and say, I'm not okay, and this is why. But a lot of times, like you said, things are so superficial. People just want to be loved for what they do or for how they look, and they believe that. So then they attract someone also who's going to believe them, that's going to love them for what they do and how they look. So if a girl is like, oh, if I'm, overweight, someone's not going to love me as much, I have to be thin, then she's going to find a very superficial man who thinks the same thing. You need to be thin for me to show you attention. And then you have two sicknesses coming together, which wreaks havoc in a marriage.
Yeah, it's so surface level. It's hard to get the depth in a superficial age because people are on social media and they Photoshop and everything. You have all these influencers, and kids are being trained that
Yes.
what they see is what they should want.
Right.
And instead of like the depth of I'm a child of the '70s and I'm reading, William Blake and Tennyson and reading books that are longer
Yeah.
than 70,000 words. you know,
Yes.
and listening to albums all the way through and listening to the lyrics and trying to figure out what they meant and
Yes.
not just bop into a beat, but actually trying to understand what the artist is saying and
Yeah.
and and wanting to process, these feelings and emotions and understand how they relate to me and how I relate to them. And today it's like, oh, this is about the bounce, about the party, about the money or what you could get out of it. What if it's just a thing about trying to teach a lesson or a story or talking about pain? Dude, like, well, where's that? That you have to kind of look at what are we putting out for the people to consume that where it's putting their mindset. I'm a big advocate is like you really need to look. It's like in computers, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you give me bad data, I'm going to give you a bad result. And I think human beings have a little bit of that too. It's like if you get a lot
Yeah.
of bad stuff, it's like it comes, it's reflective.
100%. Yeah. And that's why, like, we are obligated, not like part of that self love, that foundation, that first pillar that everything else stands on, that self love, part of it is the protection piece where we ask ourselves, like, how much social media are we consuming? Just the fact that we're spiritual beings and that we have brains that can get overwhelmed by just having too much imagery that we need to process because we're always processing things in our brain. Like, how many images did you see today? To me, it's crazy that when I ever scroll on social media, not that I do it frequently, but sometimes I'll do it and I'm like, holy crap, people do this all the time. Like, so much imagery comes into
Doom
your
scrolling.
brain.
Yeah, doom scrolling.
And
They just
yeah,
keep
and
on
it's like
overload.
brain yeah, your brain becomes like literally addicted. I was watching this experiment that they took away phones from middle schoolers, and the kids were like, "Oh my god, I didn't even." Then they took the phones away and they were all so upset and they were all so angry. And then, 2 or 3 weeks passed by and they were like, "Oh, I didn't realize that all of my anxiety, why I couldn't fall asleep, why I would wake up anxious was from my phone and just being
Yeah,
overstimulated with over imagery and having the lights affect your circadian rhythm and all of this crazy things." Like, these kids, they were little kids too. They were like middle schoolers, so like 12, 13, and they were having horrible like anxiety issues all related to the phones, and they didn't even realize it until someone took away their phone. So
yeah,
it's
high
really
social
powerful.
pressure. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like you really kind of need to disconnect from all that tech and go back to reading books and walking in the woods and playing sports and playing with toys that are not electronic, to use your imagination, with
Yeah.
Legos and erector sets and blocks and, you know, because you need to have something that's not being driven by like the toys today have the theme and the kid's imagination is not thought. It's like you're directing your imagination instead of the kid having an imagination to create whatever world they want. they're being given a world to be in.
Yeah.
And I think that's somewhat destructive.
It's very destructive and so dangerous because the way that we heal is actually through using our imagination and like future pacing and creating a future that we didn't even have yet. And then saying, okay, this is the future that I see in my mind. What steps do I have to take in my reality right now to get there? Like Sarah Blakely, who's a very successful entrepreneur and billionaire who is the founder of Spanx and now Sneaks, she said that when she would start her day, she would put in her schedule 1 hour drive around Atlanta where she lives and where the headquarters were, just so that she can daydream, so she can hear her thoughts, fantasize, come up with different uses of her imagination. And that was like one of her tricks to success and creating a multi-billion-dollar business, was just letting her imagination run free without bombardment. And
Yeah.
so people really need to understand that this is not, a fluffy idea, go take a walk in the woods and put your phone away. It's like, this is a science-backed, necessary way that you need to understand that either you use your mind or your mind uses you. And if
Yeah.
you're constantly consuming unhealthy content and scrolling, your mind is using you. You're not using your mind. And it's very difficult to get to know yourself and what your trauma bonds are and what your unhealthiness and what your need to forgive yourself for, if you're so bombarded and processing all of this imagery and sound versus you, your feelings, your emotions, your day-to-day life.
Yeah. You need to let your own imagination kind of rule your mindset rather than somebody else's algorithm determining your
Yeah.
mindset. But
Yes,
we
exactly.
we went over it a little bit, but I want to mention the marriedin2025.com. A link. I always want to mention the links on the show. People click on the link. What do they find there?
It's a great question that my husband always changes. So I'm guessing. So I'm guessing, and my husband's my engineer and my CFO. Basically, there's different challenges that we're going to be creating. So Married in 2025. Oh, that one is a beautiful option to have a course where you get married in 2025 through understanding the 7 common mistakes that single people are making right now in the dating world. So it is an opportunity for you to get a free PDF and opt in for free, and or pay for a video digital course that gives singles an opportunity to see what the most common mistakes are that people are doing in dating now, so they can say, oh, this is what I'm doing, and understand it. Because the way to prevent divorce is through educating yourself on what's causing it, because nobody goes into marriage thinking they're going to get divorced, but that's the majority of what's going on today. So we really want to go into life with a aggressive education of like, no one's going to make my future great but me. And if marriage is the number one indicator of how successful I will be physically in my longevity and my health and my everything, then I want to make sure that I don't just fall prey to falling in love and then being too scared to walk away because I'm in love and I've already invested my time in this person that it seems crazy to pull out now. But what you want to do is make sure that you make the right decisions before you decide who to put all of your time and money and energy and love into, so that it's not such a crazy thing to walk away. You actually can grow with them and you understand the mistakes that are creating singles getting into these divorced and unhealthy relationships, so that you can prevent them yourself by having higher levels of awareness, self-love, education, and success. So that's what you can find on that link. And I hope everyone joins. I'm also doing a challenge next week where you can join. It's going to be datingsecretschallenge.com to join the challenge that's coming up next week, where we go all into this idea of how to prioritize and love yourself so that you actually can attract someone who's going to love you.
That's awesome. I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today, and
Thank
hope you
you,
have a
Phantom, for having us.
great rest of the day. And this will be published on right now. It's live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. It will be on all the other platforms where you can listen to a podcast like Apple or Spotify video podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon by later today. So we will create a landing page. People can choose whatever platform they want to be on, but we're live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at the moment. And those are going to be out there in the world. As soon as we get off the air, those links are active right now, and they will be active as soon as we're done. But thank you for being on the show.
Amazing. Such a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you have all the success in the world and a very, very happy, healthy year.
Thank you.